Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the August edition of the Amherst Town Planning Board. Let's start with roll call.
Shamil.
Here.
Davis. Gill.
Here.
Giuliani. Khan.
Here.
And Murphy. Raphael.
Here. Okay, before we get into the topics today, just a couple of procedures and ground rules. First of all, the members of the Amherst Town Planning Board are volunteers appointed by the town board. We make final decisions on site plans and subdivisions with respect to rezonings and comprehensive plan amendments. We make recommendations to the town board, who are the elected officials. We make recommendations to them, and the final decision goes to them at a separate date before the town board. Couple other procedures here first, before I forget. If for whatever reason there's an emergency, I would ask everybody to go out that door and to the right. Out the doors on the back. Do not come this way. Come out here. With respect to each of the hearings today, the petitioner will present to the board on the agenda item. The board will then ask questions and converse with the petitioner. The chair will then ask if anyone from the public has comments or questions on the agenda for them. We will ask the petitioners to address any questions or comments, from the that come from the public. We'd ask you to ask us the questions, and then we'll have the petitioner come back and address those. There's a laser pointer attached to the podium if anyone needs one. If you're going to use it to refer to the screen, please use the one to your left, my right. The petitioner will have 15 minutes with which to speak. The comments from the public, the first person that speaks will be deemed the neighborhood resident spokesperson. So if you've decided who that's going to be, have that person line up first, because that person will get 15 minutes to speak as well. Every other speaker from the general public after the resident spokesperson will get 3 minutes to speak. And I would ask to have, not a lot of people here right now, but when it comes time, please line up so that we have some order. We know that you're coming up here. Okay, with that, let's get started on item number 10060 Transit Road.
Good evening. My name is Ken Zalch. I'm with the engineering firm GPI, here tonight to represent DJC Land for Ashway Green Phase 2. We're here tonight to review the sketch plan. This is part of a larger development that extends off Transit Road between Transit and Smith. Phase 1 has previously been in front of this board and has received sketch plan as well as preliminary plat approval, and is in the final stages of review and approval heading towards final plat. The portion that we're looking at tonight is on the east side, connecting to Transit Road and going over to the town ditch. It's just shy of 9 acres and properly zoned for the subdivision that we're seeking. Previously, you see the plan here? We're here tonight because of the sketch plan. Previously, we had, when we went through a rezoning of this entire property, we had townhomes located in this section. It is multifamily zoning. Previously, we had 52 townhome units. Based on the development and the way developers are looking at things, he wanted to revise that from the original rezoning, and is now looking to scale down the number of units and make them individual lots, smaller patio home type style homes, and 27 instead of 52, so we almost cut the density in this area of the development by about half. These lots well exceed the minimum requirements. Minimum area for a lot is going to be 6,000 square feet in this area. We're at 7,500 square feet. Lot widths are about 52 feet wide right now. Everything on this will be public utilities. We're fronting a public street, which is going to be the continuation from phase 1, continuing out to Transit Road, public sanitary sewer, public water line in front, all connected to what's proposed in phase 1 to the west on the other side of the ditch. The frontage portions, just so the board knows, is not being looked at at this time. That's going to be your mixed-use commercial center. That'd come in separately for a site plan, but we are looking at the road connection to transit with this phase so that we can have our dual access from Transit and Smith Road for the entire development, providing those linkages. We understand that there may have been a few missing items, so the board cannot act tonight. Just in terms of a approval letter from the current landowner that DJC Land Inc. is under contract with. They are working towards getting that letter of authorization, allowing them to move forward with the project. We also do understand that there are a few comments that the planning department had, and we will be looking to get those addressed, but would certainly welcome any questions from the board as well as from the public, and we'll look to get those addressed in time for the next meeting then.
Okay, well, let's start with some questions. Carrie, any questions?
No.
Art?
Yes, a couple. You already mentioned that the ownership is still an issue, right, of the land?
So DJC Landing is under contract with the current owner. They just didn't have a letter of authorization. We weren't able to secure that in time through their attorney prior to this meeting that basically authorizes them to move forward. They certainly, ownership is not a question. It's under contract. They are moving forward. That's why Phase 1, who was part of that owner as well, has gone so far as well. It was just something that was asked more recently from the town of Amherst, so they are working with the attorneys to obtain that.
I think we're all aware of the sewage issues in that area, and we noticed that the engineering department has not yet given its okay. So, as you said, it's difficult to act on it today.
Yeah. So we are certainly aware of the downstream sewer capacity issues that affect not only this property, but much of northern Amherst. In our discussions with the engineering department, we do realize that until that issue has been resolved, we will not be able to get any type of final approvals on the project. But given the nature and how long it takes to get through the process with the town in terms of, obviously, this is our first step at sketch plan. We still need to go through seeker. We need to go through preliminary plat review, engineering, outside agency approvals. We do intend to move forward with this, even knowing that capacity downstream may be an issue and knowing that we can't necessarily get a final plat approval. We're still seeking that process because we just don't want to have to wait, potential 8 months, a year, until those issues are resolved in northern Amherst and sewer capacity is created.
Well, this area has come before the board before, and there's adjoining areas. One of the issues has been internal connectivity north and south of this particular parcel.
Yes.
Do you think you're going to address that, or?
Yes, one of the comments that we did receive from the planning department did request stub streets to the north and to the south. We will be providing that. It's not indicated on the most recent plan, but we are looking to do that at the eastern end of basically where you see the cutoff there between the commercial area and the patio home lots. We do intend to put streets and connectivity to the north and south, understanding that transit road access management is important to the town as well as to the DOT. I do want to clarify again, because it was brought up originally, and it's something that's kind of plagued this project throughout. When we originally came in front of the town of Amherst for the rezoning of the entire property, it was joined with the adjacent landowner that owns the property to the northeast, fronting Transit Road. The rezoning, while it was a joint effort, the development itself, that landowner did not come to any agreement with DJC Land, who's under contract with this property. There's been no agreement. There's been no further discussions. They did not want to pursue that further. So in terms of having a joint development plan, combined site plan, that's not on the table right now, but we are certainly willing and will be providing access points to the north and the south, closer towards Transit Road. Further, we understand DOT has some of those comments related to that matter. We are looking at updating our traffic impact study so that we can respond back to DOT, knowing that our original traffic counts that we had reflected a denser footprint here with those 52 townhome units. Since we've cut that nearly in half, obviously our traffic's going to go down and some of the warrants may be changed at that point.
Thank you. Thank you. No more questions.
No further questions.
Okay. Well, for my position here, you know, if we were to vote on an adjournment to keep the hearing open and have you come back with more updated plans that take into account the engineering with sewer and demonstrating where at least the stubs for connectivity, north or south, are, you seem to indicate that's something you guys are willing to do. How long would it take to do that?
I mean, we're looking to have a response ready so that we can be back in front of the board in September, certainly.
Okay, so if we were to adjourn for 1 month, do you think that'd be enough time?
I do, yes.
I have no other questions. Okay. Does anybody from the, you're all set? Okay, is there anybody from the general public that has comment or question on this project? Yep.
Does this phase include?
If I could just interrupt you, I need your
Oh.
name and address first.
Susan Cobus, 1079 Smith Road.
Thank you.
Does this phase include the commercial development?
Okay. Well, I'll have that responded. Is that your only question?
Okay, and I was wondering where that would be. That is all.
Okay. Go ahead, we'll have him respond to everything.
Fran Dahlman, I live on Glen Oak Drive. He's mentioned this as phase 1. Is phase 2, the top left corner, still on the agenda at some point?
I'll,
The other way around. This
Yeah.
is phase 2, phase 1 is what's shown on the top left.
So you're doing the one in red.
That's what we're in front of the board for.
Has a new traffic study been done?
We did,
The last traffic study we talked about was done during COVID. The last time I was in there, they had not redone it.
why don't we get all of your questions and comments, and then we'll have him respond afterwards, rather than go back and forth like this. I'm sorry, go ahead and ask whatever else. If you have nothing else, that's fine.
The traffic study, my question was, had it been redone? We're not sure.
I'll have him respond to that.
It appears the only exit is on Transit Road. So they've given up on the Smith Road exit. And I assume they've finally given up on connecting back into Ransom Oaks as a community. Okay?
Anything else? Okay. Anybody else with any questions or comments?
Yes, my name is Stephen Massaro. I live at 1116 Smith Road. Now, that phase 1, has that already been okayed to be done?
Sure, we'll ask him. I'll ask you to ask all of your questions. We'll have the response.
Phase 2, same thing. We'll go back to the beginning. Understand the traffic needs to be done again because all the new developments that you're putting around that area that are in proximity of where that is, it's gonna add all that. The football fields you added down the street with the traffic going up and down, the compost with trucks going up and down that road constantly. Like I said this before the last time, Smith Road has turned into a racetrack. You guys, none of you guys live around there, but ones that do know what I'm talking about. It's a racing zone for people. I never see cops out there taking radar. Besides that, the flood problem. What are you gonna do in phase 2 as far as, you know, getting rid of the water that we have when it rains? Those are my biggest concerns. And now I also see that road is gonna connect to Transit Road now. Is that the idea? Because then now we have another cut through for people coming up and down that road that are gonna go through. Same problem you're gonna have there as when you're trying to make a left turn onto Transit off of Smith. You'll have the same problem there. Is the amount of traffic that goes up and down Transit Road, especially at rush hour in the morning and in the evening. So those are my major concerns at this point.
Anybody else? Okay, then have you address the concerns if you can, please.
Okay, Just to clarify some of the comments, what's in front of the board tonight is what's outlined in red. That's phase 2 of Ashley Green. Phase 1 is in the upper left-hand corner. And that project, while it doesn't have final approvals yet, has gone through a number of approval stages with the town. And we are approaching the final plat approval stage, which would be the final approval for that development. It has not been granted yet, but we are getting close to addressing all town and agency comments for phase 1. The commercial development, which is a transit road frontage, that is a separate project, will be submitted as a separate site plan. There has been no formal final determination on what we're doing there, obviously looking at mixed use per the code. But beyond that, I can't really speak to what that site plan will involve. That will be reviewed when we submit it. So what we're looking at here is only those 27 lots outlined in red. Those are consistent in terms of the road network is consistent with which is what we've always shown on the development. There's a connection to Transit Road as well as to the west through phase 1 that does go out to Smith Road. This is a fully connected subdivision. In addition to that, phase 1, which has already gone through this board a number of times, does connect to the north through Ruby Lane. That was a condition and a requirement from the town of Amherst that we did adhere to. In terms of the stormwater floodplain concerns, there's a floodplain analysis that we have prepared for the entire development. And stormwater will be handled on-site by a stormwater facility, a wet pond. Again, this is at sketch plan stage, so really what we're looking at here is the conceptual layout of the lots, the roadway, and general utility layout. We're not fully into the engineering yet. We do anticipate, though, that all stormwater will be flowing to the west into a stormwater pond and then outletting to the existing ditch on site. We, of course, have to follow the New York State DEC standards as well as the town of Amherst regulations on stormwater that require treatment as well as quantity control for the stormwater runoff as well. The traffic study that was initially prepared during COVID, yes, we did look at historical counts, accounted for those. We talk about in the traffic study, in the traffic assessment, there is an increase, a background traffic demand that increases. I know we're not at the seeker stage yet, so it's a little bit early to be reviewing this, but for traffic, we account for that background traffic increase year over year, a certain percent increase that's plugged into that report that accounts for adjacent developments that may occur in this area. That traffic study, again, just to remind everyone, that traffic study accounted for a higher yield on this property, 52 townhome units instead of 27 single family. And these are not going to be 27 single families that are likely going to be occupied by full families with kids and that type of thing, where you're talking about 3-4 bedroom homes. These are more geared towards smaller lots, 52 feet wide. You're talking more in the vein of empty nester homes, smaller families, typically just a couple, occasionally, maybe an adult child or something like that. But it's not really who it's marketed for, is for your typical, two-parent, two-kid family. So if anything, when we reassess the traffic, the impacts on this are going to be reduced given the elimination of nearly 25 units off of the project from our previous assessment. Any other questions? I think I covered what public had.
Okay. Is there any other questions that you feel was covered? We can take those now.
The commercial is not part of this project at this time. That'll be a separate action at a later date.
That road won't have any driveway from that commercial connecting to that road.
I would guarantee all the driveways for that commercial will be connected to the town road, not to Transit Road, because DOT will not allow, more than likely, commercial driveways going onto transit. They will want it at a single point coming out.
I'm talking about your new road. You're not going to have any driveways from the commercial tied into that new road.
No, that's exactly what's going to happen. Any of the commercial development fronting Transit Road is going to connect to the proposed public town road that we're proposing with this phase. DOT? I don't know what you're talking about. Commercial driveways can connect to town roads.
The first one, the Ransom Oaks had a guy come in here and told you couldn't do any of that.
I don't know.
You can't have a road go through a commercial site that ties to a residential area.
You are correct, sir. The zoning ordinance stipulates you're supposed to take the access on to a higher classification of road. DOT's policy, though, however, is if you have another access to a public road other than the state highway, you have to take access from that. So DOT denies an access to transit, we have to grant it to the local street.
Well, maybe I'm not saying this, but I'm talking about your commercial lots.
We're not even discussing the commercial property tonight. This is for a 27 lot subdivision, not the commercial property. That's not.
You already got phase one, now you got phase two, then the commercial will go in, it's all gonna end up happening anyway.
Yes, that was part of the original rezoning, was a full
Here you go.
development.
This is what's ruining our quality of life. Too much going on in that area. We told you for years about the flood problems when it rains out. None of you want to listen about it. I want to know what's going to happen behind my house. I don't want a retention pond that's going to be into a mosquito problem in my backyard.
Well, sir, if I could address that point, I'm not saying your concerns are invalid or going to be ignored. But at this particular stage here, this is a sketch plan where that's the next couple steps is to get into all that. And there'll be hearings for that as well. So I think that's, basically what he's trying to say on this. This is the general idea stage, it's a sketch on here. So, I want you to be able to say what you have to say, but I don't want you to think that there's a final determination being made right now either.
But back to that, we're going to make sure that can get minimalized as much as possible.
There will be an opportunity for input on that as well.
Did I understand phase one has already been approved and it's in the book?
Yeah.
Phase one has received sketch plan approval, preliminary plat approval. Final plat approval is still pending, submittal of plat.
When did that go through? We're trying to stay on top of this, and I wasn't aware that one was already done.
Mid-year last year.
Preliminary plat was last year. The wetland permit for phase one is still pending, which is one of the reasons why we're not at final plat yet. We've been told a month and a half ago that it was going to be issued the following week, but we've been waiting over a month now for that to happen.
Bill? And just so we can push past this hearing is not about phase one. It's not, no one's on notice for that today from the public or, in fairness to him, for that as well. There'll be a final time for that to talk about that as well. But, just with respect to phase two, okay, we're gonna limit this to phase two tonight. Is there any other comments or questions for him while we still have him here for a hearing? Nothing else? Okay. I'm not gonna, at this point, I'm not gonna say that the hearing is closed. We'll decide that at the vote, okay? So unless you have anything else, we'll move on.
I would certainly request the public hearings closed. I think the items that we talked about, just in terms of changes, the access to the north and south, that sounds looking for, we've agreed to those and certainly can answer questions from the board on that, but that's not going to materially change the layout and the alignment with what we have proposed here.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay. Item number 2, we have Sawyer's Landing, 50 Dodge Road. Hey, Mr. Hopkins is already ready. Go ahead.
Yes. Good evening, Chairman and members of the Planning Board. Sean Hopkins on behalf of the applicant, Sawyer's Landing LLC. We're here this evening in connection with 3 interrelated requests for what's known as Site A of the overall Muir Woods project. That currently has an address of 50 Dodge Road. And just to acclimate everyone, this is part of the original 330-acre so-called Muir Woods new community development. We're over on the western portion of the site, which is here. This is Dodge Road, Sweet Home, the 990, and then you have John James Audubon Parkway. This site is zoned new community district. It's been zoned that way for about 50 years now. And one of the requests we're making is to reclassify some land. We're also making a request to amend the finding statement issued by the town board previously pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act. And then finally, to amend some declaration of restrictions filed in June of 2018, only pertaining to Site A, meaning the deed restrictions that apply to Site B, which is a student housing project, and Sites C and D, which is a subdivision, will remain identical to how they are today. Next slide. Site A is there highlighted in the bottom left there. Site B is the previously approved student housing project, which some of you were involved with the review. And Site C and D was the subdivision that was previously reviewed and approved and built out. It is important to note that out of the original 330 acres, 226 acres are permanent open space, which is almost 70% of the site. That does include acreage that's supposed to be dedicated or donated to the town sooner than later. It does need to be done in connection with the approvals for this site. The size of Site A is about 17.42 acres, and to acclimate everyone in terms of nearby land uses, we have residential uses here to the north, in what's commonly known as Bucyrus Heights. We have a multifamily project, Sweet Home Central School, some office buildings. We are also in close proximity to the town of Amherst recreational trail that extends all the way over to Ellicott Creek and on Niagara Falls Boulevard into the trailhead on North Forest and Maple. And one of the important aspects of this project is we'll be connecting into that, which is a nice amenity. Next slide. This is the concept plan that was originally approved. We're going literally back about 17 years now for Site A. At that time, the economy was much different. There were discussions with the University of Buffalo, and what we were showing was flex office and research and development buildings. That actually never occurred. Next slide. So what we did is we went back to the drawing board and came in a couple of years ago with a new plan. I believe it was approved in September of 2022. One of the key attributes of that plan that was approved in September 2022 is we made an effort to avoid wetland impacts and reduce them far below what was originally approved. So we reduced the federal impacts by 62%, and we reduced the state impacts by 87%. That was largely by leaving this large wetland alone, designing the stormwater management system around the edge. So that is still part of our planning for the project we're presenting this evening. Next slide. Those wetlands were authorized pursuant to wetland permits issued by both the DEC and the Army Corps of Engineers in late 2019. And as of July 30th of this year, the wetlands that are authorized to be filled on this site have been filled. So wetland issues no longer exist with respect to Site A. Next slide. This is the plan that you approved on September 27th of 2022, and it's very busy, but I'm going to highlight on what it included so then I can tell you what changed. Because 2 4-story mixed-use buildings located here and here, 15,000 square feet of first floor space, 5 first-floor apartments and 45 upper-floor apartments, a 4-story multi-use building, multi-family building here with 48 units, 44 units in 2-family attached townhomes, which are these orange or tannish colored, 54 units in 2-family townhomes with attached garages, which are here, 2 single-story apartment buildings with 6 units per building, which was back here. So we had a total of 258 residential units. You also can see the recreational trail wraps around the edge and then also connects across Dodge Road into the town's recreational trail. Subsequent to that, we learned that that doesn't require some wetland impacts. So part of that will actually be in the form of a boardwalk, which while it'll cost about $500,000, will be a cool amenity, meaning there'll be actually, as this trail hugs around wetlands here, It'll actually be in the form of an elevated boardwalk. Next slide. And this is the current plan. So I'm going to highlight what's changed. The two 4-story mixed-use buildings, which are now shown in blue, exactly the same. We've replaced the 4-story, 48-unit multifamily building, which was here, with a 4-story climate-controlled storage building, which we know there's high demand for in this area, and we think it'll be attractive not only to the residents of this project, but in particular the very large student housing project on the site directly to the east, north of John James Audubon Parkway. We're showing 44 units that consist of 2-family townhomes, which are here in gray. We're showing 63 2-story townhomes here. These were previously going to be for rent. They will now be for sale. So now we're bringing some for sale product into this area. We know there's a shortage of attached townhomes for sale in the town of Amherst, so we think that'll be attractive to those individuals that want to downsize, seniors, empty nesters, et cetera, et cetera. So we've reduced the total residential density from 258 units to 207 units. So it's actually a reduction compared to what you approved in 2022. Next slide. That's just to show those areas that'll be permanent open space. And again, the recreational trail will extend all the way across the site, across Site B, which is student housing, all the way here, and then across the site. So this will really be an attractive extension of the town's recreational trail. And what's cool is Site B, which is student housing, individuals that go to school at the University of Buffalo now will have direct, safe pedestrian and bicycle access to the campus without having to go along any roads or on any sidewalks, which is very cool. Next slide. So as Mr. Marshall mentioned during the work session, this also does involve correcting an oversight that occurred previously, which is the reclassification of this area depicted here, 13.45 acres from NCD, not NCDD, NCDRI, which is restricted industrial, to NCDLC. NCDLC allows residential uses, where NCDRI does not. It was already approved for residential uses. Scott identified this as an issue, and we thank him for that, so we're just going to correct that and clarify that. Next slide. We're also, as I indicated, asking you to consider an amendment of the Declaration of Restrictions. This will ultimately go in front of the town board as well. So I'm going to talk about the restrictions that are in place today, pursuant to that declaration recorded on June 21st of 2018. Number one, pursuant to those declaration, we're prohibited from having any construction access through the subdivision. There was actually a stub street left here. We heard stub streets at the previous hearing. There will be no construction access to the site through the residential subdivision. Number two, there's a restriction that no condominium form of ownership can be used. We're not proposing that. Next slide. Number three, we've amended some of the setbacks to make them more specific to what we're proposing. I worked with Scott in developing these, and basically what we've agreed to, subject to your review and the town board decision, is a 30-foot minimum building setback from any residential lot line for the detached 2-family townhomes, so here. 400-foot minimum building setback from a residential lot line for the 4-story mixed-use buildings. So that's at least 400 feet from here. I believe it's almost 500. 500-foot minimum building setback from the residential lot line for the 4-story multifamily buildings. Those are actually gone, but now replaced with the self-storage building. That setback is 450 feet. And then 60-foot setback from any residential lot line for any parking. It's important to note the parking will be in the front of these units. So there's some minor modifications, actually more protective of the residential neighborhood to the north than what previously existed. Next slide. Then we've also agreed to maximum heights. The maximum height of any residential building, the third bullet point, within 500 feet of a residential lot line shall be 35 feet. That was previously 40 feet, so we've reduced that to 35 feet. And then the maximum building height for the 4-story multifamily buildings and for the new climate-controlled storage building will be 60 feet. I believe that was previously, Scott, 50 feet or 55 feet, but it turns out 60 feet gives us enough height for those buildings. And again, they're not located within 450 feet of the closest residential lot line, which is here. Next slide. It is important to note that the town board previously did amend the comprehensive plan to accommodate the uses that we're proposing. It was originally designated industrial office. and was amended to mixed residential, which is this orange area here, which is Site A. Next slide. And it's also important to note that ultimately the town board, subject to a recommendation from you, will be required to consider an amendment to the finding statement. That was last amended, I believe, on September 27th of 2021. We have submitted a red line version of that that shows exactly what's being changed. Those changes largely mimic the changes that we're proposing in connection with the amendment to the Declaration of Restrictions in terms of the building breakdown. What was the year, Scott? 55 was the height, so we're going to 60. Yeah, thank you. So those basically mirror what we're proposing in terms of changes to the project layout and the project mix, and then those additional restrictions, both in terms of building height and building setbacks. It is important to note that this is a type 1 action pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act. It always has been. I've been working on this project, believe it or not, since the year 2000 in some way, shape, or form. We do think it's clear that this is beneficial from a seeker perspective, again, because we've reduced the density, we've reduced the traffic, we're providing the recreational trail. The project's evolved for the better over time. We have provided previously a copy of the no impact determination letter issued by SHPO on October 10th of 2021. We've updated the traffic impact study, which shows a reduction of traffic during the AM and PM peak periods. And as Mr. Ulatowski indicated during the work session, ultimately, if you issue a positive recommendation, and this goes to the town board, and they approve these 3 pending approvals, will not be done. We'll have to come back in front of you for a site plan amendment with fully engineered plans. So with all that being said, we are asking to consider 3 things this evening. Recommending the town board approve the amendment to the finding statement, recommending the town board approve the reclassification of a portion of the site to correct a previous error, and then finally, the amendment to the Declaration of Restrictions, limited to Site A to make it consistent with the project layout and the project components as currently proposed. If there's any questions about how we got to the plan that we're presenting this evening, or the lengthy project history, I would welcome the opportunity to address them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Carrie, any questions? No. Herb?
No questions.
Joe?
No questions.
I have no questions myself. Is there anybody from the general public with any comments or questions for Mr. Hopkins? Hearing none, I'll close the hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And we got item number 3, Town of Amherst petitioner. Mr. Ulatowski, go ahead.
Good evening, members of the Planning Board. Daniel Wachowski, Assistant Planning Director. This evening, I'll be presenting again amendments to Chapter 204 of the Town Code, which is the Town Subdivision Regulations. I presented this to your board in June, and I'm here again to hear any questions and present it again. Since the last presentation, we had our law department review the regulations, amendments to the regulations in their entirety. We added 1 additional section, and the law department supports those changes. Next slide, James.
I don't think these are the right slides for you, man.
I'm sorry?
I don't think these are, that's for the SA. That's what I mean, yeah.
So you should see one that says purpose in there, which would be...
Give me 1 second.
Yeah. You back it up one more? Okay, so for those of you who weren't at the June meeting, the subdivision regulations were originally adopted in 1979 with the following purpose: to allow for the orderly development and redevelopment of land, to obtain harmonious and stable residential and non-residential areas, to ensure the design and installation of high-quality improvements and infrastructure consistent with specification and standards, to minimize ongoing costs of operating and replacing the town's infrastructure, to provide safe and convenient vehicular and pedestrian circulation, to require the reservation of space for school, recreation, or other public use, and to ensure subdivision design is mindful of minimizing impact to natural resources. Next slide, please. The amendments address some minor deficiencies and provide greater clarity to ease the code's administration. The amendments include increasing the minimum right-of-way width for local roads from 52 feet to 60 feet to provide for additional space for street trees, increasing the minimum public sidewalk from 4 feet to 5 feet, standardization of engineering geometric designs consistent with the National Design Standard or the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials Standards, AASHTO, as well as minimize the use of cul-de-sac street design. Next slide, please. Additionally, prohibiting the use of a hammerhead turnaround other than for a temporary road termination until a future road connection is constructed. Modification of the existing temporary turnaround to meet the dimensional standards of the International Fire Code, as well as standardization of curb type. Right now, the subdivision regulations allow for 3 curbs. We believe that only 1 curb type should be provided, and that's the upright curb. The last section, which I mentioned previously, is a new section which we added, which creates a new step in the review process, requiring the town board to weigh in on any public improvement proposed for dedication before a petitioner can file a preliminary plat application. In this instance, if a developer wishes to propose a public highway, the developer will have to obtain a resolution of commitment from our town board to accept any future public roadways before the petitioner may file a preliminary plat application. If the petitioner will not be proposing any public roads, then additionally that petitioner will have to provide draft sewer works and waterworks corporation filings with his or her preliminary plat applications. We believe this is a great new step that allows the town board to weigh in early on as to whether or not they wish to accept a public highway rather than wait to the end after the town, or the planning board rather, has already approved a subdivision. Next slide, please. We're asking that you kindly support these amendments so that we can ask the town board to hold a public hearing and answer any questions for the town board before ultimately they may be adopted by the town board. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have this evening.
Thanks, Dan. Carrie, any questions?
No questions.
Herb?
No questions.
Joe?
No questions, thank you.
And Dan, just to reiterate it looks to me like there's a lot to this, but a big part of this is to settle the public versus private street question as early as possible so that it doesn't become a problem at the end after a lot of the plans have been made.
Absolutely, and it also allows for some predictability for the development community. They can find out early on if the town really wants to accept a public highway rather than going through this entire process without that certainty. So we think it's a good opportunity for the town board to weigh in on it. The town board can ask the difficult questions. Does this truly serve the public? What are the potential long-term costs of owning and maintaining a new public highway, water line, and sewer line?
Thank you. Is there anybody from the general public that has any questions or concerns regarding this petition? Hearing none, I'll close the hearing.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Dan. All right. Is everybody ready? We have 3 things. I don't think we need a break. Okay. Item number 1, 10060 Transit Road. My understanding there's no conditions on this? Right. Is there anyone with who has wants to take a vote on whether or not to open a hearing. My position is that, and I'll propose this, that we vote to keep the hearing open and adjourn to another date. Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Second with Joe. Roll call, please.
Shamil?
Yes.
Gil?
Yes.
Khan? Yes. Raphael?
Yes.
That's 4-0, that passes. Do we need to have a vote on the date for that?
Automatic, so
Okay,
Well, it's just-
that's what he requested anyways, okay. Okay, item number 2, Sawyer's Landing LLC, 50 Dodge Road. We have 3 separate votes on this. First, and no conditions to any.
There's no recommended conditions on any of, on the resolution.
Okay.
Or on any of the, or changes to anything in here.
The first is the amendment to the certification of findings. Does anybody have a vote for that? Does everybody have a proposal for that?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Motion to approve, Herb. Is that a second, Joe? Yep. Roll call, please.
Shamil?
Yes.
Gil?
Yes.
Khan? Yes. Raphael?
Yes.
Passes 4-0. Next, the amendment to the declaration of restrictions. Anyone on that one?
Motion to approve?
Motion approved by Joe. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Carrie seconds. Roll call, please.
Shamil?
Yes.
Gil?
Yes.
Khan? Yes. Raphael?
Yes.
Passes 4-0. And finally, the amendment to the Audubon Development Plan. Anyone on that one?
Motion to approve?
Motion approved by Joe. Anyone have a second?
I'll second.
Second, Carrie. Roll call, please.
Shamil?
Yes.
Gil?
Yes.
Khan? Yes. Raphael?
Yes.
Okay. And finally, the last one, the Town of Amherst petition with regard to the proposed amendments to the town subdivision regulations. We'll have a vote to approve on that.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Harb. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second, Carrie. Roll call, please.
Shamil?
Yes?
Gil?
Yes.
Khan? Yes. Raphael?
Yes.
Passes 4-0. Okay. Yeah, we gotta do, okay. Yeah, I know we got some discussion after this. Let's do the roll call, or the minutes. You have a 5-minute break before you start? That's fine. Yeah, let's do the minutes now. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes from last month? Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Care of the motion to approve. Anyone with a second? I'll second. I'll let Harb second. Second for Harb. Roll call, please.
Shamil?
Yes.
Gil?
Yes.
Khan? Yes. Raphael?
Abstain? I wasn't present.
Can we pass 3-0?
But I also can abstain.
Well, okay.
You want Nora, Nora explain?
So can I,
If he's read the minutes,
I've read them.
understands them, we can vote on them.
All right, then let's revote.
Okay. Do I have a new motion to approve? Carrie, do I hear a second?
Second.
Second, Harb. Roll call, please.
Shamil?
Yes?
Gil?
Yes.
Sorry, Khan? Yes. Raphael?
Yes.
4-0 passes. Thank you.
Say, I thought I abstained because I wasn't present.
I won't take a motion to adjourn now because we'll do that after Dan, but Dan wants 5 minutes, so we'll give him 5 minutes.
He was there, I think he left.
starters today.
This is probably the last one.
All right. Okay. Good evening. We're gonna take some time to go through the records report. These aren't all that frequent, but we did get a request from the town board for the planning board to review and consider the suburban agriculture district alternatives report that we distributed last month at the end of your meeting. I think we sent along a copy of the report. We sent along a link to the video and the public presentation that Colliers gave to the town board. The town board is seeking your comments on the report, and I think more importantly, thoughts on implementation, strategies for implementation. As you're aware, there's a extensive list of proposed zoning changes in the report. If we're going to move to eliminate the suburban agriculture district in Amherst, all those parcels that are zoned SA need to be rezoned to another district. And so that report, which remains a draft report, a working draft, contains some recommendations for zoning changes. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at those. There's about 1,000 of them, so I'm not going to ask you for your thoughts on the individual recommendations. But I think more importantly, there's some options that we have to maybe try to implement that study, the findings of that study, in a rational kind of way that doesn't require massive amounts of rezoning. Roberta Rapocio is here with us. She's a senior level planner and basically in charge of the long-range planning division right now. And she's going to provide some insight on this and then hopefully spur some conversation. Amy is charged with trying to capture the thoughts and the recommendations that you might have. And then the town board asked that we provide a memorandum to them, maybe by close of business tomorrow or Thursday, summarizing your thoughts, so they would have an opportunity to think about that at their upcoming meeting. Just as a way of a little bit of history, this report was initiated in February of 2022. It's been around a while. The impetus behind the report was the town board's desire to have a good conversation about what suburban agriculture zoning means. There's one case that kind of popped up that really forced the town to think a little bit about what SA means, and that's the subdivision rezoning on Dodge Road, 1789 Dodge Road, Mr. Rubino's property. You probably all remember that one. It just was just rezoned by the town board in the last month or two. The rezoning action was held by the town board until such time as they had received this report and made some determinations as to whether or not they were okay with the recommendation specifically for that property, I think. They did find a recommendation acceptable and they rezoned the parcel. However, as noted, there are several proposed actions in this report. And again, what we want to do tonight is talk a little bit about how best to go forward with the recommendations of the report, with the understanding that these zoning actions will come to this board first, as they normally do, and then on to the town board. So you will see these again. The question is, what might be your preference in terms of the way they come to you? And Roberta will talk about those alternatives with you. So, Roberta? You want me to leave this up here? You got your own stuff, right?
Yeah, I think that would be great. Just that we were putting something.
Can you hear me? Thank you. Yeah, as Dan said, the report is in draft working form, and it does sort of allude to almost 1,100 rezonings of individual parcels. So while that is not practical to do all at once, the consultants did offer some recommendations for alternatives of how to do that, has some implementation recommendations. And so tonight we're going to talk about a couple of different ones that we should look at. First, for example, we're going to talk about text changes in the comprehensive plan, because when you do a rezoning of a district, an entire district of which you're recommending to have them taken away, there's a lot of language in the current comprehensive plan, even though that's a little bit older, that have language that would need to be updated and amended based on this document.
I'm sorry. I just want to be clear. The zoning district, suburban agriculture, has posed problems for the town. There's a kind of a little bit of a problem with combining suburban form of development with agriculture development. So when people see SA, some people think it's suburban development, some people think it's agriculture development. As I mentioned, that case on Dodge Road was kind of classic, where we had neighbors who had lived there for a long time and felt that their area was agricultural and shouldn't be changed to a suburban form. And then there were others that said, well, if you look around, there's all kinds of suburban single-family residential development occurring around that area. So what is it? Is it suburban? Is it agriculture? It presents a little bit of a challenge. So the idea here is to eliminate SA and make a more definitive statement as to what the zoning and the preferred form of development would be on those properties that are currently zoned SA. I probably should have said that earlier. So. And that starts with the comp plan.
Starts with the comp plan, exactly. The comp plan has language in it that defines what a residential use is, a mixed residential use, an agricultural use, an office use, commercial use, and all those, which would have to be amended to a new use, since suburban agriculture would be not part of that conversation. We would have to revise that language if we were going to use the existing AG district, which is in the comprehensive plan, to take place to some of those suburban agriculture properties, and also the rural residential district is also included in the comprehensive plan currently, but is not on the ground. We would also have to use that designation to also replace some of the suburban agriculture properties. So there's a lot of text amendments that would need to be made in the Chapter 3 land use for the comprehensive plan. For example, in the actual document you have in front of you, let me find the page here for you. I just want you to look at the table. It's table 4. And the reason why I'm going to point you to that is it's suggesting a comprehensive plan amendment, a proposed district amendment. So, for example, SA would be eliminated, so we'd have to put some language in the document, taking out the suburban agriculture and putting in the rural residential. But right now, rural residential is showing specific attributes that would be changed as well. So instead of being like, so right now it's saying rural residential is 3 acres, a minimum of 3 acres with 100-foot frontage. So, sorry, originally it would be 200-foot frontage, but now they're asking us to amend it to say a 100-foot frontage. And this is to right-size some of these properties and right-size the zoning. That's really what they're trying to do, because we eliminate suburban agriculture as a district. Those lots, the remaining, we want to make sure that they're zoned appropriately to their current size as well as their adjacent properties. So there'd be some zoning ordinance amendments as well as these comprehensive plan amendments. So in the zoning ordinance itself, you'd have like the rural residential districts, you'd have the dimensions below, and we'd have to amend those dimensions. And how do we approach that? I think we would have to approach it where you go comprehensive plan amendments first, and then the zoning ordinance amendments next. And these are just something to think about, because these would come in front of the planning board first as recommendations to the town board, and how you would want to look at that based on this study here and their recommendations. So that's something to look at, and we'd like to know your findings based on the readings that you have in front of you, if that's something you agree with, if you see if through the mapping, the changes that we made to R1 based on the sizes of certain properties that are around certain areas of their existing ag properties. R2 as well, RR, rural residential, would be more of a transitional zoning next to the ag properties to help buffer the existing farms from residential use, which causes conflicts in uses sometimes. I don't think the town is officially a right to farm, so the farmers need that. Although farmland that's in the Erie County District is protected under right to farm, but not all farms in Amherst are protected under that. So we would need some transitional properties, and that's what the RR and the R1 districts would be based on this analysis.
So, stop here for a moment. Anybody have any thoughts on changes to the comprehensive plan? There's some things mentioned in the report. Roberta mentioned a couple things. Any thoughts on any changes that should occur to the comprehensive plan to take into account the recommendations of the study? There's not. I just want to kind of check down, go through the list, make sure to cover down on things. As Roberta mentioned, one of the important parts here is to try to recognize that low-density residential development can occur in the town. There are certain areas that it's probably better than others. Northern Amherst is the focus primarily of this study because that's where most of the suburban agriculture zoning is. So what we probably would do is have some changes to the comprehensive plan that would talk about that a little bit more succinctly, and then make recommendation to change the zoning to some of these lower density residential districts, rural residential R1. Roberta mentioned there are some changes that are proposed to the provisions of those. I don't know if you had a chance to look at those or if you had any questions about those.
Yeah, like Table 4 has a lot of them.
Yeah, but just any thoughts in general? Again, we're dealing with North Amherst primarily.
north of North French, typically.
Any thoughts on anything there struck you? If not, move on to the zoning ordinance with respect to this. So, same thing with the zoning ordinance. There were some recommendations in there specifically to modify some of the provisions of the lower density residential districts. Again, I don't know if you had a chance to look at those, if you feel like those are appropriate. Then I think combined, I would ask you generally in agreement with the recommendations of the study for the general comp plan and zoning ordinance text amendments. Anything you want to talk about with that? Feel pretty comfortable with those.
Well, I mean, I could definitely see the internal contradiction on the entire SA concept.
Suburban agriculture.
Yeah, those mean it's not quite polar opposite, but kind of polar opposite things. It's not quite urban, but obviously it's suburban. So I certainly understand that. I think my question for you, it sounded to me, Dan, like you wanted to get something to the town board fairly quickly on this. They don't want to wait a couple months.
Well, because you've had it for a month. That's probably why.
My concern on this is that we have 3 members who aren't here.
Let me, and I understand that, and we'll make a note of that.
Yeah.
And I can certainly confer with the supervisor and town board and ask them if they need this recommendation right away, or if you could take this up again in September. But at this point, the ask was have it in place before their meeting on the 3rd of September. So I'll give you a month to look at it. Yeah, so I suppose it's probably helpful to think a little bit about what else is going on besides Dodge Road. We've had some requests, most notably from some landowners along Shellis Road that want to change the recommendations in the study, even though they're not released yet, to make sure that the recommendation of the study reflects a single-family residential district. Right now it's zoned SA because SA is that holding zone, right, that it was assigned years and years ago. We're just going to wait to see what happens and we'll rezone it to something else. It was the SA holding zone concept. We're not in a position to necessarily do that anymore because we've got some pretty hard and fast ideas about how growth in North Amherst should go. We finished the farmland protection plan last year. Really recommends trying to preserve the agricultural presence in North Amherst. Shellis Road is kind of the border of the northerly growth. Shellis Road itself does not have sewers, although it has single-family residential development along the road. It doesn't have sewers. So the minute we start talking about extending sewers into North Amherst, we start to have to consider a development that would take advantage of the sewers, or would be the land that would be opened up for development with the presence of sewers there. So Shellis Road is kind of the Maginot Line, if you will. It's where the
And New Road.
fight is, and New Road the same way. So we have had some requests from landowners to change the results of the report to reflect single-family residential development along Shellis Road. So that request has been made a couple times. I think the town board feels like it needs to respond to these, start to respond to these. So this is one of the reasons why they were looking to get a relatively expeditious recommendation.
I think it's important for the board to understand how we think this document should be used.
But we'll get to that.
Okay.
We'll get to that, yeah. But I just want to make sure this is structured so Amy's not running all over the place. Comp plan, zoning ordinance, any thoughts on any of that based on your analysis? If not, I mean, there's a series of questions that I think I posed last week in the email I sent. Just kind of want to follow that outline if we can so that she can structure what she needs to do. And Mike, to your point, I think if that's something the board feels like it'd be helpful to have a little more time to look at it, then I think that's something we can certainly put in that memorandum.
I think there would be an opening consideration. Unfortunately, we've had a few people have been unable to make some of the recent meetings. I don't know what their position is on any of this. I haven't spoken to either one of, any of the people that are missing last month.
We'll note that, there's only 4 members here.
If the board can afford time, is this worth having, I don't know, maybe Carrie had indicated to me some sort of meeting, for further discussion that's maybe on a separate night other than a board meeting night on that?
Similar to like a training, you mean?
Kind of, yeah, exactly. And I thought it was, I don't know, that might be imposing something on Dan. I could say that, but.
I think, well, let's just continue on with this, and we'll note that, and then we can
Right.
discuss that at the end.
Yeah, if they're not interested and they want a quick answer, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Okay.
Okay, so in terms of plan and code, there you
Yeah.
go. Go over.
Okay, so if we do decide, and you do agree with the comprehensive plan amendments, along with that, you would have to also amend the Figure 6 map, the land use map. It would come with amendments to that as well, because we would remove SA as a district, and those properties that were SA would now have to be rezoned. Well, actually, they're all pretty much the same land use, but some will change land uses as well. So there will be some changes to the Figure 6 as well. But that's just to make you aware of that as well. So not just text, it'll be some of the mapping as well.
I think what I would say is there are areas in the plan that indicate that certain parts of North Amherst should be agricultural. And the intent would be to rezone those parcels to AG or agriculture, whereas now they're zoned SA, the holding zone. So
Yeah.
it's a commitment by the town to say these lands are for agriculture. So that discussion in itself will be very interesting.
Well, clearly the town did think about this in the past and did create an AG district, and it created a rural residential district. It's just not on paper. It's not mapped. It's there because at one point they did want to have these properties properly zoned, either AG or RR. So currently every farm in actual active farming, every active farm parcel right now is not zoned AG. It's zoned SA. It's not zoned as a farm at all. So that would kind of be like the first maybe low-hanging fruit, where you take anything that's in a conservation easement in an ag district should be rezoned to this AG that was already proposed and in the comprehensive plan and in the zoning ordinance as well. So that's kind of the first step.
So let's
Or
keep
possible
that,
step.
keep that in thought. Let's go to
Possible
the next,
step.
I think the next slide. You get into something.
Next, yeah, so the next one, moving down the memo that Dan had, would be prioritizing and executing the zoning map amendments. So this would be the rezoning. So there's a couple ways we could do this. They proposed a few different ways in the document. One would be by topic. So what we mean by that is what I was just talking about, prioritizing properties that are already in conservation easements, that are already active ag, that possibly in the agricultural county district, that the land use is agriculture. So those properties could be zoned possibly, the first to be rezoned by topic. And again, next would be to be rezoned, as you're looking at these examples, AG and rural residential. So these rural residential districts are the properties adjacent to these agriculture districts. Some of the larger, like skinny properties that are along New Road and Tonawanda Creek Road. So those properties could be the next sort of tier to be rezoned by that topic. And the last topic you could go by would be open space parcels. And we're working currently right now on an open space and agricultural prioritization plan that hopefully should be ready to look at in a couple weeks. So pending that report, we would have some parcels already prioritized by the town and our consultant. So those could be the third tier of properties being rezoned. So you'd have, by topic, the most really critical properties, the ones that are most threatened or that we really want to protect, would be the first to be rezoned. And then you could take the other part of the zoning, however, either individually or as it comes up, or another kind of prioritization tier. Or we could do it by geographic area, which is how they did the report. They have several, I think it's 5 or 6 zones. So like the South Amherst area, for example. This is one of the examples they use in the report, where they have that prioritized first. So any property south of North French Road that's zoned as SA would be the first to be rezoned, because they're the ones that are probably the least likely zoned correctly. they're all in currently, existing suburbs, subdivisions, they're all near R3 properties, they're all, they're still they're in the already developed areas. So they would maybe be prioritized, so, because those are the ones that would come up maybe first in front of a board to be rezoned. Dodge Road would be a perfect example, yeah.
You got a piece of land zoned
South of
SA,
North Friendship.
south of North French.
Mm-hmm. And then the next parcels would be the ones north of Shellis Road and west of Smith Road, where they're all in these districts, where they're either conservation easement or they're in, they're all, they're ready to be zoned agriculture. And then finally, you would have like south of Shellis Road, where there's almost 500 parcels. Just if you look at map 5, that they would be the fourth or third level of to be rezoned, and the final parcels to be rezoned would be the northwest Amherst area, where it's not as critical. We're not seeing any sort of development or developers coming in to have those rezoned right now. So they kind of offer that option as well. So you either have it by topic, or you have it by geographic area, or some sort of mix of both. It's just something we want to get your opinion and your findings on that. Something is, do you have, as you read it, do you prefer how they set that up by topic or by geographic area? What are your thoughts on that? We're kind of looking for what you think about that. By area, by the desert, okay. By area?
By geographic area.
Geographic area, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that myself.
Okay.
So, I mean, I think we've heard time and time again in various projects that have come before us, how the people in these areas, North Amherst, they want to protect the agricultural, at least the rural nature of where they are. And I think in talking with members of the staff, I think that's pretty much been the belief of everybody here. So I think more clarity on these things is important. I think it's necessary. I think we can, just my opinion, I don't want to speak for anybody else. The suburban agricultural designation of a zoning district almost begs the question as to why can't I put more housing here? Why can't I develop this as housing? It won't take very long for it to lose its agricultural appeal. It'll just be like any other development south. It'll all be the same after a while.
Yeah.
And we know that agriculture and suburban development don't do well together.
Right.
Next to one another.
Yeah.
So the right to farm kinds of issues that farmers face with the surrounding development. We had a couple instances already along Dodge Road where there's a subdivision and there's a woman who had a rural parcel who did some small scale farming, and the new neighbor decided to tell her that they didn't really care for the agricultural activities on her property. She's like, well, been here a while. You're just
And
here,
zoned for it.
this is SA, so it really, so that's an area that's South Amherst area that Roberta mentioned earlier. So if you were going to prioritize even these areas based on your thoughts, I don't know if you kind of follow along with this list of areas or whether you have some other thoughts on it. That's the kind of thing that's going on in that South Amherst area, south of North French, where we have some agricultural activity, and the folks that are practicing that are running into some issues with their new neighbors who think it's more of a suburban environment.
Yeah, and she's unfortunate because she's the adjacent property owner north of that development, and she has 8 new neighbors from when she had none. And she was doing farm, she had farm equipment, she has a barn, she has an animal, she has fields. She's not officially a farm in the terms that she's not in the agricultural district, but she has allowed those uses, and she's used them for 20 years or more. So now she's faced with suburban, attitudes, and they don't like the smell. It doesn't look good. It's too close to my fence, and it's tough,
And I guess, I don't know whether, Dan and Scott could jump in here, but my feeling is that Northwest Amherst probably is the last place. If we had to prioritize our effort, that might be the last place we would go. Again, every one of these areas has individual parcels with individual issues. But for us to be able to tackle this in some kind of an organized fashion, that Northwest Amherst might be the lowest of the priorities, just trying to look for some thoughts on that.
Would you, for example, this is an example of one they put in the report. And so this is how they're saying, they would say you do South Amherst first, and then all the ag properties second, which is in map 4 and 5. And then you would go to map 6 last. So we're asking, is that the order you see, or do you see a different order? How would you, do you agree with this? Or like if you took a look at each individual map, how would you see it? If you,
So I'm going to throw something out there. Minimally, we hope to use the document as essentially an appendix to the comp plan, so that if we're not proactively rezoning these parcels and someone comes in and says, my 50-acre parcel, I wish to be rezoned to R3 so I can put 65-foot wide lots on it, and ask you to change the policy in the comp plan to expand sewers in this area, we would say that if we had this document, we could rely on this document for further guidance. Because this document can show you, can show us that that's not the ideal land use for that particular area. It should be either a rural residential zoning, it should be an agricultural zoning, and it shouldn't violate the current policies on expansion of our sewer district boundaries. So minimally, if we're not going to proactively rezone 11,000 parcels, we at least want to be able to use this report as an appendix to the comprehensive plan for further guidance. I mean, that's minimally what we're hoping the town board will do, and we hope the town board won't entertain any changes to the report to satisfy one particular landowner. We think it should be looked at comprehensively and not whittled away. So that, I'm just throwing that out there. That's minimally what we would like the planning board to do if you aren't rushed to ask where we should prioritize proactive rezonings, but minimally we want to use it as a resource for future rezoning pressures.
I think that was one of the very first recommendations in
Yeah.
the sheet that we sent. Again, use it much like we use the comp plan. We look to that to provide geographic guidance for decisions. If the SA zoning on the zoning map is not giving us definitive guidance, then we would defer to this along with the comp plan, provide recommendations to you, and then ultimately to the town board. That is a strategy unto itself, and it might be one that would be taken up rather than proactively rezoning, something that we probably could do relatively easily at any point in time. So I don't know if that's something you kind of balance that or consider that as a way to execute the recommendations in here versus a more proactive approach, which would be follow prioritization for actual zoning changes. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
yeah, so you wouldn't, obviously rezoning this many properties is going to take time. It's coordination. We have only so much staff. It would be a long process. So we don't want to just leave SA properties just out there in the wind. So it would be something to have this as like an appendix or reference of the comp plan, because every single property is in here, and a new zone is attached to it as our proposed zone. And if we accept this, if you accept it as the town board accepts it, then this becomes basically the new land use for SA. So you guys can refer to this and say, oh, well, because we have several properties that people call and they say, oh, this property, and we're like, oh yeah, that's an SA property. Well, what did they say they wanted to use it for? Oh, well, it's in this report as going to R3. So if they want, like, say they wanted.
I want to make it clear, we are not doing that.
No, we are not, but it's a reference, we can do that.
This doesn't have any official standard
No,
yet.
it doesn't.
So
But it could, that's what I'm saying, you could get it to that point.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let me just ask, I mean, I agree with Dan, at a minimum, if nothing else can be done, we use that as a guide, obviously not binding on anything on this, but just use it as, it's a known reference, it's something that whether planning board or town board can refer to look at, here's a recommendation from somebody who's studied it.
As guidance, not adoption, is that how that would work?
So, I mean, I got no issue with that. Is the preference, from your perspective, and I understand, rezoning all of this, even by geographical area, there's 4 steps there, it's gonna take a while. Well, what do you, I mean, do you prefer, I mean, I tend to prefer being proactive and getting something done.
I think what I would suggest, this is just a suggestion, is that we do use this, as we just described, as a guide to provide recommendations as rezoning requests are made. So much like the comprehensive plan or the existing zoning ordinance, we would use this as a recommendation, recommending reference to whatever information we provide to you. So I think we can do that now or when the report is accepted by the town board. And that would, at the very least, that's what we want to do. And I think the other thing is we think we need to probably do some proactive zoning. Primarily when the study that Roberta mentioned earlier, the ag and the open space study comes out, that in combination with these recommendations is intended to help us to more definitively identify and protect the agricultural resources that we have. That means the property that's farmed, that could mean the properties that are directly adjacent to it, so that we don't run into a lot of right to farm problems. So we would probably use this in a more proactive sense once that study's out, start to identify places that we really need to protect agriculturally. And then I suspect, I would say we're going to go south of North French and try to clean up what we suspect will be south and north, like adjacent to North French, I think, would be to kind of clean up the areas where we know we're going to get.
So basically kind of a hybrid approach.
Yeah, that's what I would suggest, yes.
This is our reference, this is our guide, while the long process of amending the comprehensive plan and the zoning text amendments and all that takes place in, 4 steps, which obviously will take quite a while.
And it may end up that it shakes out in this order, in some form or fashion. I'm not sure it's, definitely this order, but I guess it gives us a leg up on the changes that are going to be requested from where we don't know. Just come in the door one day and say, I want to do this. It also gives us an opportunity to be more proactive about it in places that we prioritize as under some consideration threat.
I mean, to me, that makes the most sense, is a hybrid approach to that. I do believe at some point you're gonna have to amend the comprehensive plan to effectuate all of this. But that's gonna take a while. Something should be in place for reference by both us and the town board in the meanwhile.
Mike, to that point too, I'd like to kind of maybe reassure you that the consultant that did the report did take into consideration the comprehensive plan and figure 6. So when they made these recommendations, they took that into consideration. So to your point, the two should be in pretty good sync, where the comp plan needs to be updated because it is an older document that has not been updated comprehensively, pardon the phrase. That, yeah, we would use it that way, but have some assurance that this reflects what the plan called for along the way. We would use both, but
Right.
just be assured the comp plan is reflected.
Yes.
Okay. Well, let me open it. We've discussed like a hybrid approach. We've heard what they have to say. Does anybody else have anything that they want to add to that?
Very general sense. It's not bad. The reason, motivation for this change, I think, is quite evident. Moving towards suburban has evolved over the years. And if we look at the way it is understand by suburban, look at SA, it comes together almost all.
Great.
And so I can see motivation behind this. The actual far as the hybrid approach. Use these guidelines, give us information, make decisions.
Great, thank you.
Carrie,
The only thing I would add on, in addition to, yes, the hybrid's great, I appreciate everyone's comments. This will evolve, and meaning that for each application, there'll be nuances of acceptance, tweaking, I hate that word, but it is a good word here, and you'll see how it works. And someone can say, with respect to the comprehensive, and then following to the zoning board and then to us.
The question that's been brought up a couple times, I referred to earlier, about some properties in the north part of the town where there's been a request to change the recommendations of the report. I guess what I'd ask you to do, Ken, is with that in mind, you get a chance to go back and look at it, see whether you think, my personal opinion would be town board shouldn't cherry pick the report at this point. Now, to your point, there's gonna be individual requests that are gonna come along, we're gonna have to consider those as we go. But I'm pretty confident, I think the staff's pretty confident in the recommendations that are made here. We've been over it several times. A lot, kind of gone over with a fine tooth comb. So one of the things I'd like to be able to say to the town board is, this report as it stands today, let's just use it the way it stands today. And if someone wants to change the recommendation, then it becomes a more formal request that needs to be studied and a recommendation made from the town, from the planning board to make that change.
but by that point, the report would have some deference. The report would have some deference by that point. Obviously, it's not binding.
Right.
But would have, some deference
I mean,
during this long process.
when this thing becomes public, it's such that the town board releases the draft, I suspect we're gonna have people that are gonna come and say, I don't like the recommendation. I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that.
I would be shocked if that didn't happen.
So we're, it's never easy when you're talking about property rights. So we expect that's gonna happen. We're gonna try and counsel the town board to be judicious about that. And maybe there's a more formal process that has to be undertaken, rather than just say, I wanna change the designation on my property. Maybe there's a process that they need to go through to alter that recommendation that's in the report. We think it's well considered. We think the recommendations are well considered. I don't know if that, what I guess what I'm saying is, my advice to the town board would be, if you want to entertain changes to this, this might very well override our current zoning map in terms of recommending reference, because right now it's just all SA. So when somebody decides to do something other than SA, we're gonna go back to this, and then we can modify this accordingly. What I don't wanna do is have somebody walk up to the town board some Monday night and say, I want you to change designation on 502 New Road. And the town board goes, yep. There ought to be some process to that.
Is there anyone clamoring to keep SA status? Joe, do you have any comments or questions?
No, I think the interesting part will be when the public's going to
Sure.
Yeah.
Again, what we're trying to do is formulate a strategy, so when it does get out there, we've got an idea in mind as to how we're gonna try and manage it.
Like you said, people are going to, first and foremost, wonder about, does this change my property rights?
Yeah.
What I'm intended to do with my property, what my neighbors are intended to do with their property, and at that point, we'll have to have answers for all of them. I suspect for many people, it won't really change much, but they're going to be worried about it anyways.
Yeah, it's, absolutely, it's about educating them and getting,
It won't affect them until we actively
yeah, exactly.
change their zoning.
Yeah.
They could be entitled to lawful non-conforming status as an SA parcel. Until we actually change the zoning or they request a zoning change, it won't have much of an impact on them.
Okay. Well, I think, well, with that, I mean, I don't want to interrupt you, but,
Amy, what you got? Okay, that's the primary, folks are, okay. All right, anybody disagree with that? Because, not, we'll talk about maybe another.
I wonder if anybody disagrees with the hybrid approach. I would say this, and I understand you might be under a time crunch from the town board. If they would permit us to allow the other three members to weigh in, I think that would be fair, but if they can't, they can't. You've heard from four of us.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, with that, anything else, Dan?
So just a couple things you might want to be aware of. I know everybody wants to go home. We just completed a study of Main Street in the Eggertsville and Snyder area between Bailey Avenue and the Kensington Avenue and the I-290. That report will likely be out within the next week or so. It contains some recommendations for some geometric changes to Main Street, some pedestrian bicycle amenities that aren't there now, some other kind of streetscaping recommendations. That report will be coming out again probably in the next week or so. There'll be a presentation by the consultants that prepared it in mid-September. I think it's September 16th. September 16th is the town board's afternoon work session. Similarly, we continue to work on the Audubon plan. We're kind of going back and forth with our consultant, trying to work through some ideas on the land use concepts. I don't think that one will be coming to you anytime before the next, probably October, November timeframe. Just so the rest of the board's aware, Harb stepped in for Mike when he was not feeling so well. He sat in on his first capital improvement program committee meeting last week. I don't know how exciting it was for Harb, but just so you know, there is a spot on the CIP committee for the planning board chair or his designee to sit through that process with the supervisor and the committee and formulate that capital improvement program. And those are generally large projects valued at $100,000 or more. And it's a program that's put together for a 6-year period, largely meant to implement the comprehensive ideas in the comprehensive plan or other major planning initiatives in the town. So,
As far as I'm concerned, I'm back, so.
okay, so the next meeting is Thursday.
Is Thursday gone?
It's next Thursday.
Hold on, what time?
Yeah.
Make sure I want, if my availability was in question, it's nothing to do with
Okay,
health.
I'll let you know before you leave. I don't have it off the top of my thing. So there's just a couple of things that we're working on. I don't know, Dan, do you have anything you wanted to add? There is a fair bit of activity going on with some review of our zoning districts to try and begin to tune those up a little bit to be more reflective of contemporary development practices, and that stuff will probably be coming to you over the course of the next year or so. So
If you could shoot me an email, the only question I would have right now is with respect to my son, in terms of, this is a terrible week because it's that week where daycare ends but school hasn't started yet.
Yep. If you
We can probably help.
I'll put it, you can attend.
Mike, I'll text you with the time.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think
Is
it
it
is.
online?
No,
In person?
it's in
That's
person.
gonna be a problem. How fun. How long does it take?
The meeting, 2 to 3 hours, depending on,
Starts at 1, it's gonna be.
so it's your afternoon.
The problem is I'm most likely gonna have to be the one that picks up my son at 2 o'clock.
Okay.
Take care of him after that. That might be an issue.
So you can put in as much time you want. If you want Harb to attend in your stead, it doesn't really matter.
Harv, if you could do it, that would
up to you
probably be
guys.
the last one. Yeah, which is,
Well, we'll get you something in the morning. I'll send it to both of you, and you guys can decide amongst yourselves. Okay?
okay,
All right, thank you.
all right. All right, do I hear a motion to adjourn? Harb, second.
Second.
Second, Carrie, roll call, please.
Shamil.
Yes.
Jill.
Yes.
Tom. Yes. Raphael.
Back on the 19th September? Is that what day we talked about? Back on a normal schedule? He's gonna be 7 in a couple of months.
Thank you guys. Here, give us, here.
I'm done with the water for today, thank you though. Yeah, I finished all mine up. We've been thrown off for felons. I know where we stand.
Rank slightly below them early.
Sick of you people, I miss my felons. Okay.
Better crowd.
Yeah.